Education personnel. So a little bit about us. We've come all the way over from New Zealand to be here. We are here, we've been helping teachers to get roles in New Zealand schools for 20 years now. And we've been bringing teachers in from overseas for about 15 of those years. The teachers that, the teachers that we work with come from mostly English-speaking countries, although some people who have got near-native proficiency from other countries, mostly in Europe, are also successfully teaching in New Zealand. But generally those teachers that are working out best in New Zealand schools are from the UK, Ireland, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and some from South Africa as well. So unfortunately you can't just arrive in New Zealand and get a job and start teaching. You actually do need to go through the process of getting your qualifications recognised and getting registered to teach in New Zealand. So first thing you do is you would apply to get your qualifications assessed, and then the NZQA look at those to see if they are the equivalent of a New Zealand teaching qualification. We know that qualifications from the UK and Ireland translate really well into New Zealand qualifications, and there generally isn't too much of a problem there. Once your qualifications have been assessed, the next step is for you to apply for teacher registration, and then make sure you have the right visa so that you can work legally in a school. The last part is that you would complete a salary assessment, and that's usually done after you've secured a role, so probably not anything to go into in too much detail at the moment. You don't really need to take notes about what we're talking about today. We've got a guide to teaching in New Zealand, which is a 25-page document, which you're welcome to come past our stand and write your details down for, and I'm happy to send that out to you. So, I was here in March and we were talking to lots of primary teachers across the UK and Ireland, and they were all saying to me, what are the jobs like in New Zealand at the moment? And I was saying to them, if they're a secondary school teacher, especially in STEM subjects, so science, technology, engineering or maths, that there were plenty of opportunities. If you were a primary school teacher and you couldn't get a working holiday visa, it would be almost impossible. Things have shifted a lot since then, and I'm actually going to put that down anyway. Things have shifted a lot since then, and now it's across the board. So our early childhood centres, our primary schools, and in our secondary schools. There is still high demand for those STEM subjects, but they are not the only areas where we're looking for teachers. Now, English teachers, geography teachers, primary school teachers, the conversations now are, when are you coming? Just to give you a bit of an indication of a snapshot of roles that we've got going at the moment. Languages seems to be a big one that we're finding. People who can speak French or Spanish specifically to a senior level are in demand, and technology teachers, so people that have done study in that area. New Zealand isn't training technology teachers, so they're all coming from abroad. Experienced early childhood teachers, so if you've got, say, a primary qualification, primary school teachers, there's still high demand for that. However, it's always good to be able to differentiate your CV if they've got any specific skills that would be useful to certain schools. So if you do sign language, if you've got special education experience, if you've got extra courses and things like that you've done, it is really useful to put all of those things into your CV as well. The Irish Sign Language is apparently very similar to the New Zealand one, so if you know Irish Sign Language, you'll have no problem in New Zealand with that. And then we've got a very different school year than the Northern Hemisphere. We start our school year in the end of January, and it goes through till mid-December. So it's a 40-week school year, broken up at around 10 weeks with a 2-week holiday. So there are 4 terms in the year, and our busiest time for supply teaching or relief teaching is over winter in terms 2 and 3, and there is extremely high demand in Auckland and Wellington for people to come in during that time. So New Zealand's not very big. We're about the same population as Ireland. but it is very diverse and very, very different what you will find in one centre to another centre. Auckland is the most populous city. 1.4 million of our people live in Auckland. The cost of living is a lot higher because it's a big city, and it is very temperate the whole year round. It's got a very warm climate. It does rain a lot, but the Aucklanders seem to think that that's all right. And of course, because there's there's so many people living there, because there's so many people living there, there's more schools there, and that's where a lot of the opportunities are. So in parts of Auckland, there is extremely high demand. Wellington, so that's where education personnel is based. In Wellington, it is the capital city. You can get around really easily by public transport. It's got fabulous public transport, and the city is on the harbour and is known for its cafe culture, and it's the cultural centre of Wellington, of New Zealand. And Christchurch. So in 2011 there was a massive earthquake in Christchurch, and the whole central city was devastated, and really hasn't been rebuilt to anywhere near the level that it should have been by now. So Christchurch is full of tradespeople. It is a bit harder to find accommodation, and that accommodation can be a little bit expensive. So those being the three biggest of the cities, you can see that they're all very, very different. So as part of deciding to come and teach in New Zealand, you also need to do some research on where in New Zealand you're interested in going, depending on your circumstances. So as I said, we've placed quite a number of teachers from the UK and Ireland over in schools, and it's fairly similar to the UK education system. The Irish teachers do really well there. They are loved by schools and by principals. The teachers are, I guess, very similar to New Zealand teachers, so they fit in really well and they adapt really well to the style of teaching in New Zealand. So when will you find a job then? I'm over here for the next few weeks, and this is actually our busiest time of the year. We are extremely busy recruiting for New Zealand schools for a January start, and have been since about September. So there's a graph going to come up and actually show it, but pretty much the last term of the year, people are looking for staff for next year, in secondary especially. Roles do become available during the year, because in New Zealand schools you can resign any time. You don't have to resign by certain dates, you just have to give a term's notice. So roles do come up right through the year. Most people do leave their jobs at the end of the year because, as you'd imagine, you get vested in your students and you do want to see the work you've done with them through to completion. And if they think that there is going to be difficulty in finding a teacher for a certain role, they can be advertising up to 2 terms beforehand. And I know I started advertising for a role in October of last year, and the teacher didn't actually start at the school until July, because that was the first date they could be available. So that's 7 months. So for those hard to staff areas, there is certainly no time like the present to start looking for roles. There you go, so as you can see, primary roles are advertised in the different centres around this time of year. August starting to get a few, right through September, October, November, December. And look, sometimes it's about timing. If you are on the ground in New Zealand, you've done all your processes, you're there on a working holiday visa, jobs are advertised right up until when school starts. So you could pick up a job just by the fact that you're actually there and ready to go. That's the secondary ones, pretty much the same. So where our school system is a little bit different is how it's structured. So early childhood is 0 to 5, and it's not compulsory. There is a separate curriculum for it. It's called Te Whariki, and it is followed in the early childhood years. But not all children go to early childhood centres, and so they can be at a little bit of a disadvantage in some parts of the country when they actually come to start school. Not in the academic stuff, I know the research doesn't back that, but certainly in terms of their ability to be social and learning how to interact with other children on a regular basis. So the government's doing a big push on early childhood education. They offer 20 hours free to try and get parents to actually put their children in, even if it's just part-time. And school usually would start, your year 1 or reception class, which we would call new entrants, would be, now I'll start again. So children start school or can start school the day they turn 5. And they don't generally pre-enroll, so they'll just sort of turn up at their local school and be ready to go. Or they might have made some contact with the school the week before to say that they were coming. Now you can imagine if during a term 3 of the year, or the second half of the year, how that looks in terms of all these children that weren't there at the start of the year, slowly coming in. There's often primary roles in the second half of the year because it's role growth classes. Children don't have to be at school until they're 6. But as I said, they do generally turn up when they're 5. So primary school's year 1 to 6, intermediate 7 to 8, and secondary's 9 to 13. But there are also full primary schools that go through 1 to 8, and some of the secondary schools in the smaller areas start in year 7. And then of course there's the big composite schools that are from year 1 to 13 as well. Most students would attend a state-funded school rather than an independent school, and it is compulsory for them to stay at school until they are 16 years old. Now New Zealand also has 2 very strong teacher unions, one for primary and one for secondary, and they are very vocal in the support of getting the best that they can for teachers. They negotiate the salaries, and all of the conditions that people are employed under. So they have a big collective agreement that teachers are paid by. Teachers are paid exactly the same regardless of where in New Zealand you live and work. Now that's something to keep in mind if you're looking at going to one of the bigger centres where the cost of living is a lot more. Says it's a complicated pay scale. It really isn't. What your qualifications were assessed at is where you start on the scale, and then your years of teaching take you down the steps. So a brand new graduating teacher would come onto the salary scale at around 45,000 New Zealand dollars, and you hit the top of the scale after 9 years of teaching at around 75,000. Now obviously teachers still want to be able to progress and to earn more money as their careers go longer, and so there are extra management units and allowances that are available to teachers, not from when they hit that 9 years, but at any stage, which have got a monetary value attached, and those can increase the salaries that are offered. Some of them are $1,000 increments and some of them are 4. So a head of department maths in a smaller school might have 2 management units for that extra responsibility on top of your base salary, and a deputy principal might have 5 or 6 in a small centre and maybe 8 in a large centre. So supply teaching, or relief teaching that we call it, it's a really good way if you're coming over to actually get experience in New Zealand schools. Our curriculum is different, and more noticeably in the secondary level than the primary. You do need to have a working holiday visa. You cannot get an essential skills visa to do relief or supply work. And as I said, term 1 to 4, term 1, school's just gone back. There's not really much demand for relief teachers. Hopefully schools have filled all their positions, and so they're in a really good place for the start of the year. Once we get into winter, term 2, especially in term 3, it gets so busy. Most teachers are working every possible day they want to be. And obviously by the time term 3 comes around, we're starting to see those role growth classes as well, where extra kids have turned up in primary schools and they need to take on more teachers and start new classrooms up. And then in term 4, there's not really much happening for secondary teachers because the students will be going on study leave. So we're in Term 4 now in New Zealand, and in a week the students in senior classes will actually finish for the year to go on to study leave while they do exams over the next couple of months. And then they won't be back at school until the end of January. So, you know, that's a good long 3-month period there. What would happen in a school if you had a need for a relief teacher is that you'd pick one from one of the other areas that was there, because of the fact that they're going to have more teachers than students that time of the year. Okay. So what we do is we match teachers to opportunities. We don't just farm out CVs or try and get a teacher to stand in front of a classroom, any classroom. It's about matching you with the right kind of school, a school that you've had experience in a certain area, or you prefer lower decile schools or more posh schools, all of those kinds of things. We take all of that into account when putting you into a role. Actually, you heard a little bit from the previous speaker who was saying, you know, it's about getting a job that makes you happy, and we wholeheartedly agree with that sentiment. It's about finding the right opportunity. You're coming all the way around the world, 36 hours. I vouch for the fact that that's not so much fun, and we want you to be coming over into an environment and into a job that you love. So as we said at the start, there's quite a few processes involved in coming to teach in New Zealand, and as a result of that, it can be a bit disheartening at times to actually have to send another piece of paperwork away, or getting asked for more evidence on something. And so we're there every step of the way to sort of guide you through that process and to help make it as stress-free as it possibly can be. So we asked some of the teachers that we'd already placed what advice they would give to people who were thinking about coming to teach in New Zealand. And the biggest thing that they said was, go for it. Depending on where you want to teach, there might be more demand or less demand. So for instance, in Queenstown and in Tauranga, those will be the two most popular centres in New Zealand. And we find that teachers will always say to us coming from overseas, oh, I'd really like to have a job in Queenstown. The fact is, so would everybody. Those schools have people knocking on their doors on a daily basis that are already in New Zealand on working holiday visas or whatever, so they never need to look for teachers. They've always got teachers there. And it's really hard if you limit yourself to one geographical location to be guaranteed that you get work. Any questions?